My best friend Dottie bought a piano book in the spring of 1991. Beginner's Complete Piano Course. Still had the plastic wrap on it. She put it on the shelf above her television and she said, "Velma, the day I retire, I am going to learn to play." She said that for 19 years. Dottie retired on a Friday afternoon, had a stroke on a Sunday morning, spent the last 4 years of her life not remembering my name. That piano book was still on the shelf with the plastic wrap on it when her daughter packed up the house. She waited 19 years to start living. Got 2 days. My name is Velma. Everyone calls me Vel. I am 79 years old. I kept the books at Consolidated Coal in Hazard, Kentucky for 47 years. Every number balanced, every column correct, every ledger closed clean at the end of the year. And I am going to tell you something today that is going to be uncomfortable. Because what Dottie did, you are doing it right now. I know because I did it too. For 47 years, I kept perfect books for a coal company. I never once kept honest books on my own life. Dottie and me met in 1968 at a church potluck in Hazard. She brought a lemon chess pie. I brought nothing because I forgot it was a potluck. She gave me half her pie anyway without being asked. That was Dottie. She worked 31 years as a school librarian. She loved books the way some people love air, not as a choice, just as a requirement. She used to say, "Velma, when I retire, I am going to do all the things I told children were worth doing. Learn an instrument, plant a real garden, read every book on the list I've been keeping since 1974. She had a list, a real list, written in the back of a green notebook. After she passed, I asked her daughter if she found it. She said she looked everywhere, never found it. A whole life's worth of intentions, lost in a green notebook somewhere. Dottie retired the last Friday in June of 2010. Her husband called me Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. I knew before I picked up. She waited 19 years to start living, got 2 days. Now here is the part I am ashamed of. I watched Dottie do that for 19 years. I watched her put everything in the retirement pile, the piano, the garden, the list, the trip to see the fall leaves in Vermont she talked about for 30 years, all of it in the retirement pile. And I watched her do that and I shook my head and I thought, "Velma, you are smarter than that. You are not going to do that." And then I went back to my desk and I did exactly that. I have a sewing room off the back of my kitchen. In 1987, I bought a quilting frame, a real one, not the cheap kind. I drove 40 minutes to the shop in Lexington, and I spent more than I should have, and I brought it home and I set it up in that room, and I said, "This weekend I am starting my first quilt." That weekend I had to work. The next weekend my mother was sick. The weekend after that, something else. The quilting frame stood in that room for 31 years. I walked past it every single day. I used the sewing room for storage. Last spring, my granddaughter Addie came to visit. She is 11 years old. She went into that back room looking for something, and she came out and she said, "Grandma, what is that big wooden thing in there?" I said it was a quilting frame. She said, "Have you ever made a quilt with it?" I said, "Not yet." She looked at me the way only an 11-year-old can look at you. She said, "Grandma, it has dust on it." I said, "I know it does, baby." She said, "How long has it been in there?" I said, "A while." She said, "Grandma, how long is a while?" I did not answer her. She went back to playing, and I stood in the kitchen, and I looked at that doorway for a long time. 31 years. The frame is still in there. But last Tuesday I drove back to Lexington. I bought the fabric. I am going to tell you 4 things now, not ideas from a book. I paid for these with time I cannot get back. Years spent watching the clock at a desk instead of looking out the window. Years spent getting the numbers right and getting everything else wrong. These 4 things are the most honest accounting I have ever done in my life. I am giving them to you for nothing. First, stop putting the real things in the retirement pile. I do not care if you are 25 or 65. The retirement pile is a lie. You are telling yourself, I will do it when I have more time, when the kids are grown, when the mortgage is paid, when work settles down. But here is what nobody tells you. There is always another reason to wait. Always. I waited 31 years to use a quilting frame that was sitting 10 feet from my kitchen table. 10 feet. The time was always there. I just kept giving it to something else first. Whatever is in your retirement pile, one thing, just one, do 10 minutes of it this week. Not later, this week. Because Dottie's piano book had plastic wrap on it when her daughter packed up the house, and she died having never heard herself play a single note. Second, you are keeping the wrong books. I spent 47 years making sure every number balanced for a coal company. 47 years of perfect ledgers. You know what I never tracked? How many Friday evenings I was still at my desk when the light changed outside. How many times my husband Earl asked me to come sit on the porch and I said, just give me 5 more minutes. How many times my daughter called and I said, let me call you back, and I didn't call back until the next day. Nobody was keeping those books. I certainly wasn't. I was too busy balancing numbers that would not matter to a single person on this earth 10 years after I retired. Sit down today and do an honest accounting, not your bank account. Your actual life. Write down the last time you did something that had nothing to do with being useful or productive. Write down the last time you sat with someone you love and were actually there, not planning, not worrying, not half somewhere else. Write down the last thing you put in the retirement pile. You might not like what the ledger shows, but at least it will be honest. Third, the people who need you are running out of patience. I do not mean that harshly. I mean it truthfully. My daughter Carol lives 2 hours from here. We talk every Sunday. She called me one Sunday last fall, and I missed it because I was dealing with something at the house. I called her back the next day. She said it was fine, but there was something in her voice, the way you say fine when you mean, this is what I expected. And I realized I had trained my own daughter to expect me to be unavailable. Not because I did not love her, because I had spent 50 years being very busy and only a little present, and she had adjusted to that. The people who love you have adjusted to the version of you that shows up. They have stopped expecting the full version, because you have never given it to them long enough for them to believe it will stay. I am not telling you to quit your job or walk away from your responsibilities. I am telling you this. The next time someone who loves you asks you for your attention, give it to them completely. Not with one eye on your phone, not with half your mind somewhere else, all of it. Because one day you are going to reach for that person and they are going to be gone. And the silence where they used to be is going to be the loudest thing you have ever heard. Fourth, put down whatever you have been carrying that was never yours to carry. I was angry at my father for 22 years. He was a difficult man, a hard man, the kind of man who showed love by not leaving and very little else. I spent 2 decades carrying the weight of everything he never gave me, and when he died, I went to that funeral with all of it still in my chest, all that unfinished business, and nowhere to put it anymore. I stood at that grave and I felt robbed of the conversation we never had, the acknowledgement that never came. 22 years I gave to a man who was not even there to receive it. I put it down eventually, not all at once, slowly, like setting down something heavy that has left marks on your hands. But I put it down, and I want to tell you, the day you put it down, you are going to feel something you have not felt in a long time. Room. Room inside yourself for something other than that weight. I am 79 years old. My knees are unreliable. My eyes need more help than they used to. I wear the same 3 pairs of overalls on rotation, and I do not apologize for it. But I wake up every morning in this house and I am not waiting for anything. I am not saving anything for later. I drove to Lexington last Tuesday. I bought the fabric. Addie is coming to visit next month. I am going to teach her to quilt, and I am going to make something with my own hands for the first time in 31 years. Not because I finally have time. I had time the whole time. Because I finally stopped believing that later was a real place you could actually go. Dottie's piano book had plastic wrap on it. Your quilting frame does not have to. Whatever is sitting in that back room of yours, go get the fabric. That is all I have got.